Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I welcome you to another live by PRPOI. We are sticking to our theme this month, which is switching sides. A lot of you must have wondered, is the grass greener on the other side or is it not? So, we have two wonderful professionals joining us for our live today to answer these very questions of yours. We're going to ask them a lot of interesting questions, the challenges they face, what skills they took with them, how you can be inspired by them and do something similar. And we also would like to ask them how they use the resources to be able to do this. I'm not going to waste too much time. I know you're very excited to get deep dive into this session. So I'm going to, without much further ado, introduce them to you. But I just want you to know that there's a big shout out to our content curators, Tarunjeet, Rattan, and Pooja, Trehan. I'm going to begin introducing our first panelist, that's Atreyi Goswami. She has cross disciplinary experience of over 15 years. She has a proven background in brand building, international collaborations, marketing communication, and client relationship management. Atre has had a very interesting career trajectory. She has been in agency side and corporate side, and she's also got her own marketing agency. So I think she'll be a great, interesting person for you all to speak to. I'm going to just add Atre to our panel. Hi, Atre.
Hi, Sonali. Good to be here. Looking forward to it.
Good to have you here, Ratri, and I'm going to quickly introduce our other panelist as well. Our other panelist today is Shirsha Majumder. She's a PR and corporate communications industry. She's been here with in the industry for close to 6 years, where she has handled both external and internal communication, PR strategy, and marketing collaboration for multiple brands. She's also passionate about traveling and exploring offbeat places, and she loves to dance and create comic content for social media. So we are going to have her as well on our panel right now. Okay, I think Shirsha is just joining us in a minute. So as soon as she joins, we can begin our discussion. Maybe she's having a network issue. So sorry for that, folks. She's here.
Hi Sonali, hi Atreyi.
Hi,
Excited to
hi.
be here.
Hi, Shirsha.
Shirsha, we love your background. It's very nice and blue.
So yes, just traveling again, and yeah, so it's a good mix of the both, like this panel and traveling. Excited to be
Good.
here.
Great. We are excited to have you both today. So we're going to begin. I gave a very brief introduction to you both, but we'd love to know a little more about you, and I'm sure so would our audiences. So can we begin with you guys sharing a little for your career journey with us? Atri, I'll begin with you.
Okay. I started off many years back. I like to say that I'm ancient. Hopefully, I would not be looking so, at least not on screen. But nevertheless, I started my career actually with customer service, and that was for an airlines, British Airways, and I did about good 7 years. Did like a lot of stuff, but essentially customer service and a lot of communication. That's I think in the last couple of years, that's when I realized that corp, it's interesting to be kind of getting into that. I shifted to a manufacturing export unit for about good 4 years there, and that was pure hardcore corporate. And then I moved to an agency, which was incidentally Inteleco, and about a couple of years there, and I moved back into the education industry, which I think was sort of more like a, I would not say it was typical agency, but it was more of marketing communications and along with a little bit of international collaborations in there. So I kind of did that. And then I realized that, well, it has to be a balance somewhere of both. And now, yes, I do a lot of content marketing myself. And yeah, I work along with corporates and agencies as an agency myself. So that's me in a gist.
Very interesting, Atri. Thank you for that. And I'm sure we're going to hear more about it in the course of the panel. Shirsha, over to you. You've worked with multiple brands, and as we mentioned, so would love to know a little more about your career trajectory.
Sure. So I started off by interning at all journalism, newspaper houses. Always wanted to be a journalist, And going out there, getting the byline on probably the second or third page was really a thing for me. And it was, I think, in my fifth semester of my graduation days when I happened to intern with Text 100 in Bombay. Oh my god, the place, it was so exciting, and there was a crazy bunch of individuals working across brands and strategizing so much, going out there, meeting journalists, writing, thinking, learned about the different side of the world, right? So here I am after a couple of agencies, be it Brandcom, where I started my career with, Edelman, Ad Factors. Then I took 5 years later, I took this decision that yes, let me now explore the other side of the world, how it is. Let me channel all my energy towards creating, or let's say solidifying, the position of one brand with one message. So here I am in the corporate communication side for the financial services sector.
That's really interesting, and I'm sure you both have a lot to share with us on what inspired you both to follow these different career trajectories. So, I just have a question to ask, Atreyi. You've done it all, right? You've done agency, you've done corporate communications, then you've done agency again, and corporate communications. So, I just want to understand what inspires you to make that switch. I mean, um, is it something where you suddenly say, okay, I've done this, I've gained this experience, now I want to move to the other side? How does it work for you?
It honestly, Sonali, is actually just that, right? I think it is interesting how Shisha just mentioned, right, that I had done this and then I wanted to kind of solidify it. I think for me, I have been somebody. I like the change because it's very challenging, and I think there is no end to learning, right? So to be honest, when my first switch happened, I had done client relations for a name as big as British Airways, right? I had trained in with the London team, etc., and it was customer relations at its best. And I realized that I'm a people's person, so I have to be around people. And then when I moved to corporate communication, I think the business relations perspective of it was very hardcore. There is no as challenging as it is, but there's a certain path that you follow. So for me, when I kind of had my first switch, it was simply that, a very interesting opportunity where I knew I could broaden my skills, and I had already seen one side of the coin, and I think it would be just that, like, transform to the other side and know better. But then after a couple of years, I realized that, oh, there's more that I could add on. And then I came back to working with corporates and again with agencies. So I think it has been like that, because I feel that every time a new project comes in, a new client comes in, every client is different, corporate, agency alike. Every project is different. I have to be on my toes. I think I've always been that person. I can't sit idle in one thing for like a bad thing. I have to keep thinking. If I'm not thinking enough, it's not good enough for me. So I think it has just been that, and I think I'm still learning. And you don't know when I would move back to a corporate, because I have to learn more. So I think they actually balance out each other after a point of time. But the switch essentially is that, I think you learn more. I think that's been my thing for the change.
Thank you. That's interesting. Keep learning is what I hear from you very strongly, and I'm sure so do our audiences. Shirsha, what about you? How would you describe what was it that made you shift? You said you had this electric atmosphere in agency, then you shifted to corporate. So, what inspired that?
Sure. So, just share a small anecdote here. So, when I was working with agencies, right, which of course I loved, I still miss it. But so you work backwards to the timeline mentioned by the client, right? So, if they say this project has to go live by this date, you start working backwards. Ki aaj we have to send this to the client, and for that we need to internally we need to huddle up, we need to think of this, speak to our branches, etc. And then when you take this thing to your client, they say ki nahi, delay ho gaya, we'll do it probably later. Then again you keep doing chakkars. So I think while it is a good learning in itself, but then slowly and gradually, after of course gaining a decent idea the golden rules of PR, I thought, okay, let me just try exploring the autonomy and the focus that a corporate side has to it, where perhaps a corporate communications professional, when the person is from the corporate side, that person makes the timelines. The project is in his or her hands, and the ideas and the innovations, I think everything streams down from that person, of course, in synergy with the agencies, of course. But I think I wanted to explore that side, how it is. So that was what prompted the change for me.
Okay, makes sense. Shirsha, thanks for that. I want to ask you another question, and I want to begin with you. What is the difference that you find? Like you spoke about, that in agency side you're working according to deadlines or concepts be given by a client, but on client side, you are the one who's actually the engine who's making it all move. So, what
Right.
is the key differences that you have noticed between agency and corporate?
Sure. So to begin with, I of course admire, or let's say miss, the dynamism that an agency has. You get to work with so many people, but I think when in a corporate side, and it's a big myth that people think it's a boring task. I've heard this a lot, but no, that's really not right. You work with 100 more people than you actually were working when you were in an agency. Here, the I think what takes topmost priority is expectation management, stakeholder management. You work with so many business units, and for everybody, their story is like the most important. So probably, let's say a salesperson will say, Ki, we have done so many, we've achieved our targets, we have sort of crossed, achieved it, overachieved it, we need to get this story out. At the same time, there'll be other set of people who'd like to have their stories out. So I think it's a lot of expectation management, which actually tests you when you are in a corporate side. So that is the difference, a key difference that I noticed.
What about you, Atreyi? What was it for you?
So I have to say this, that yeah, neither of them are any. I mean, am I audible?
You are.
Okay, all right. So what I'm saying is that as Shisha just said, none of them, I have to put it out there, is they're anything but boring, irrespective of where you are. Okay. Now, as exciting as the change was, honestly, I had very little idea how tremendous the differences would be. Uh, so when I say the differences, Sonali, as as you've already mentioned, and I've been on both sides. Now, I would have to say this, that agency life essentially is much faster paced than work life at a corporate.
Very true.
In a corporate, you're taking one project at a time, but your focus is on that. But then again, it has to be absolutely perfect to the, dot of an I and a strike of a T kind of a thing. In an agency, you work across a variety of projects, companies, brands, and they're all simultaneously happening. So I think one of the key differences is, yes, I'm with Shusha on it, the expectation management, because the expectations at a corporate and an agency is very different. The two, I think, the time management, because fine, your calendar in a corporate, is essentially blocked. Right, this is the kind of timeline, you put that out there, and you know that, oh, it's 48 hours means 48 hours, 72 means 72, 3 weeks mean 3 weeks, and you have a planned structure in there. But with an agency, it's like, oh, I want it as of yesterday, and I'm sure you guys would agree to it. And the yesterday is usually always day before yesterday. So I think major difference for me was actually suddenly how fast I had to start sprinting from a marathon. And yeah, it was like a very, very different thing. I think that was a major difference that I faced.
With
Okay.
you on that.
I'm going to throw a question to both of you, which is coming from one of our audiences. And that is, what was the biggest surprise in store for you when you shifted sides? Who wants to take that?
Can I just
This
begin?
is
Yeah, please do, because I'm still thinking, was it a surprise? We should maybe saying what was the biggest shock. But yeah, she's all yours.
No, so again, without, of course, taking any names, again, examples from my past. So I remember when I joined my the most recent agency where I was with, Ad Factors, I joined in. I saw a young bunch of people and talking, chit chatting, very candid, very bubbly, and discussing work, discussing ideas, sharing thoughts, lively. Everything was like cool, yeah, like how an agency is. But then when you enter a corporate, I think that's really not something that is appreciated in any corporate, of course, if it's not a startup, that is. So I think there is a code of conduct that needs to be maintained, and I think there's a way you need to be speaking to whoever, need not be somebody from the leadership team, but I think everybody has a sort of wall, or let's say a boundary around them. And I think it's a very it's like comparing a Bombay to Bangalore. So yeah, so I shifted from a Bombay to Bangalore probably, which is good in its own way. But yeah, the pace, I think, and the culture, massive shift. Yeah.
That's very interesting to see. I think we all consider agency to be like much faster pace. What about you, Atreyi? What was the biggest surprise for you?
I think there were two things. I would say a surprise and I would say a shock. So my surprise essentially was that, irrespective of what kind of clientele you're doing at, the kind of way they work is actually more similar than you think. And I was very surprised because I thought that everything's going to change for me, right? And it would be a complete, but I could actually add value to it because I'd come from a corporate into an agency side, right? So I think that was a little I would say that was a surprise for me because I thought that, oh, it's an agency, so it's gonna be changing. But no, clients are at the end of the day just that, clients. Their budget would be of a donkey and they would want the stallion, if not the unicorn. Okay, no offense to anybody, but yeah, that stays across anywhere. Okay, and when I represent a brand, I also do that. So yeah, the shock, again, no offense to anybody, was the language. I came from a background which was dealing with global procurement heads of post corporation and on that level, and the language they would do was, yes, different between the US and the UK. And then I visited an agency, and I was so not surprised but shocked as to how casual the language gets. It's like every day. It's very colloquial, right? It's like, "Ha, ho jayega," Oh, don't be worried. I had never experienced that, you know. So I think that was honestly a shock, and I'm not even getting into the details of the nitty gritties of how you write things, because how you write a corporate email is so different between how you write a marketing sort of an email. And I'm trying to be as balanced sounding that as I can. So I think that was actually a shock for me, how everybody presented. And yeah, I still dress up pretty corporate. I'm not going to say that. So I think I still dress up the way I used to. So.
I want to understand, that was a shock, and what you're mostly talking about is a shift in culture. But coming to say skill sets, or processes and skill sets, what are the key differences that you both have noticed? How does that difference actually work? Is something one would love to know. If you both can elaborate on that.
Atreyi, do you want to go first?
You can.
Shirsha, I think you should go first on that.
Sure. Okay. All right. So again, a point which Atreyi mentioned, when you are in an agency, you're working on multiple things, right, simultaneously. So most often than not, content is not really something that one pays a lot of attention to, right? So the focus there is, or let's say the priority there is, grabbing as many media opportunities, placing your client, or let's say the brand, at the required places, basis the objective and of course the business needs. So that is, I think, media relations takes up most of the time, or let's say the priority. But here, when you are in a corporate, I think the major, I think, understated rule, or let's say the most obvious rule, is communication skills. So you need to speak with, maybe as somebody who is from the sales team, somebody who is from the leadership team, to somebody from the sales team, finance team, who have no idea about PR. And when you go to them to source some information or data, whatever be it, you need to make that person understand this is where I'm coming from, this is the requirement. So I think communication skill is something which is of course the golden rule of this whole industry, but we often take it for granted. We are not really like right there where we think we are. So I think that is something, one major skill somebody needs to really brush up while making the shift, or let's say even in general. And I think the second will of course be content writing. I think that is something a lot of us face troubles with, even if it's a small pitch or maybe an authored piece. So I think a lot of time of the, I think corporates, of course, so I'll have to give it to the agency that they do their best. Like, of course, given the short brief and let's say a two-liner brief which comes from the corporate, they do their best. But I think content is something which has a huge scope of improvement. And of course, the third skill, of course, just have an open mind. If
Okay, I'm
that can
going
be
to
counted.
throw you both a googly right now. I'm sharing this as from my experience, and I'm sure a lot of our audience members or other people will agree with me. I meet a lot of young people today who tell me I can't do content. My documentation skills are weak, and I can do great. They have brilliant media contacts. You tell them you get a story on like a Zabar Chappal, they will go and get it. It's literally like that. I can't think like that. My brain will say, no, no, this is not PRable. But they will go and get the stories from the media. But when it comes to being able to align thoughts and align content, they are very weak. So what advice would you give to somebody like those people? Because obviously everybody wants to grow in their career. And, having seen both sides, what advice would you want to give to those people who turn? I'm specifically picking up this content writing thing because I'm realizing that even PR is becoming so much more content heavy recently. So I want to understand from you guys, how do you view this in terms of the content skills of youth, and how can they how seriously do they need to take it?
Should I take it up?
Harshit, you want to go first?
So Sonali, I'll first take up on on what Shisha mentioned earlier about communication and content, right? Having said that, I think it is a lot to do with the kind of time you have in hand. Like you rightly said, right? I mean, today's kids would go out and get a story on anything and everything, but content um, is something that they lag behind. Now, I believe that is because how there's been a drastic change in how uh, you know I come from a stage where I'll give you this example. I was born in Calcutta, shifted to Delhi, right? I was learning the language, and my father had shifted a year before us. So, how I learned how to write was I used to write letters to him. He would keep my original handwritten letters with him, but he would make a photocopy, correct them, and send them back to me. Now, the same mistake, grammatical or otherwise, would repeat twice. His letter replies would be delayed. That was the trigger in me. Oh, I have to make sure that I write well. Now, that was my trigger. I think the triggers have somewhere gone missing. Now, firstly, I think content takes a backseat nowadays because the biggest challenge in today's day and age has been time management, right? Like in a corporate, as I was stating, plans can take time. And I'm not even talking days and weeks, right? I'm talking if it could be even months. When I was in a corporate, I never really timed myself making a plan. Okay. But when I shifted to an agency, my luxury was simply gone. Now, when anybody shifts to an agency, right? There are multiple hats that you're donning at a given point of time. You have to juggle different opinions and viewpoints with a task as simple as project deliverables, I would say. So what happens is that when you have to really sit down and concentrate and write on anything, I think that also doesn't happen. And because the attention span today is very different, when we were learning content or writing or anything, and I speak for quite a few of us, there was no internet. I did not have a phone. There was no Instagram to distract me. There were
True.
no influencer engagement wherein it was more about fun videos, not about what we write. Now, I write. I enjoy writing. I don't know from where that it came in. I still love the smell of walking into a bookstore and picking up the book and reading it, rather than scrolling, even on a Kindle, for that matter of fact. I think it was something that was inculcated because we had the luxury of giving that extra attention span. I think that's gone missing somewhere. So the practice or that is gone. And I think that is what we need to bring back, because it is very important, irrespective of whether you are in an agency or whether you are in a corporate, right? You need to know how to write well. And I'm not even talking vocabulary. You can do a thesaurus.com, you can do a shift F7 on a word, right? And I know a lot of people who do that because their vocabulary is not strong. But at least you should not have to, you should be able to write grammatically correct. You should be able to form your own thoughts into a single, like a 300 words or a 500 words document. um, I think it comes from a lot of reading and a lot of practice. But I think content marketing, as we name it today, has taken a backseat, because somewhere I feel, you know we need to crack the story crack earlier. It's done, right? Why do we even need to bother about what we wrote on that page? Because that's the final thing, right? That we have cracked the story or we have presented it. But I'm sure Shisha would agree with me that when you talk about a corporate and presentation, you're literally having bullets, and your presentation skills in terms of how you communicate, what you write on that PPT, goes a very long way.
So I
Very
have another
important.
observation, and I want to ask this to you both. I'm getting a lot of other questions, so we'll quickly gloss over this and move. I've noticed that actually millennials, the 21-year-olds or the 22-year-olds, I don't even, yeah, 22-year-olds are millennials, their content skills are actually a little better than the millennials. So I don't know if it's a schooling shift or what it is, but I noticed that the younger crop coming in, this new generation coming in on starting out jobs, and that's going to be my next question to you both. And I don't know if you both have noticed that, but I've noticed that very pointedly that the 20-year-olds write better than the 30-year-olds.
I
Very
agree.
nice.
I agree. I
Shirsha
totally
looks
agree.
down.
No, so I was just doing a walk back, a memory walk back, and I realized that yes, even when I started back, of course there has been a gap of 2 years where I broke to do my masters. But then yes, when I started in 2014, I think I can picture myself in the office where everybody was just speaking to journalists over the phone and just writing something like on the email body and sending across, not really paying attention. So I think the generation which has been doing sort of which has been in the PR fraternity, right? The focus has been media relations, and right now, as organizations or let's say agencies have started, hiring more from, let's say, colleges or top universities, I think the millennials that we speak of right now, I think partially it comes from there, if I am to think it right.
Okay, so Shisha, I'm going to ask you another question, which has come from our audience in line with this. And they're saying that writing is still a very important aspect for a role in communication. But today, so is making short form videos also requires skill.
Of course.
So evolving from the audience question, it requires a writing skill as well as we have just realized, an emoting skill, a skill with creativity. So why do you think, do you think that we need to have today a more multidisciplinary approach to communication from young PR professionals, whether irrespective of agency or corporate?
Of course, sure. So let me just put it this way: that when the pandemic kicked in, right, I think it was what was an eye opener for, I think, everybody, respective of you are from an agency or a corporate side, didn't really matter, because papers were getting shut, editions were getting like really cut down, so you had to explore multiple options. I remember this one time, when the expectation from a client side was huge. The concept was good, but of course it was not for the traditional media, and there was no scope, to be very honest, for us to pitch it to the traditional media. So what we did was explored a lot of digital tools. We went out there, we did a lot of podcasts, we did a lot of video interactions, something like this, panel discussions we did. So I think Instagram live we did. So I think as you keep thinking and innovating and creating different formats of storytelling, so it automatically paves way for a lot of thinking and a lot of skills to cross function. Like you can't just restrict yourself to writing a pitch and sending it to the media. Today a person is simultaneously working on making probably a video, or maybe thinking ideas, giving ideas to the client on what next could be done. So I think what next becomes the most important thing right now, which of course goes beyond the traditional form of PR that we knew of.
Yeah. So, Atreyi, I want you to answer another question now, taking off from what Shirsha is saying, which is a little different, but I think it's an interesting question posed by one of our audiences. A question for both of you actually is, what would you recommend a fresher start from, an agency or corporate communication?
If you ask me, I would say corporate. And I will tell you, it's essentially linked to the same question that you said about 20s and 30s, when the entire thing happened about go beyond traditional media, and this was a very new thing, the lives, and putting it out there on digital platforms. It became a very English kind of a thing, okay? And because it was new, the excitement took away the concentration on what you do or what you write. Today's kids, when they start off, they are concentrating more because they realize that now the excitement of the newness is gone. Now whosoever sees whatever, especially with the pandemic and the focus on digital, uh, I think they realize the importance of the content that's put out there. Now I think agency, to be honest, it is a very personal choice. If you like working in a very fast paced environment and everything, I think it's amazing to start off with an agency. I would say that even if you're starting with an agency, start off with corporate clients, fixed clients, because there would be so much of learning with the basics, how you manage time, how you write anything, how you come across. um, it's always easier to kind of say things in a colloquial manner, because that's the way we communicate, even amongst our team. Even in a corporate, I would say that with your colleagues, you talk the way you talk, right? I mean, if we are all right now also, I mean, both Shisha and I have actually done English in this panel itself, right? Because we understand that's the language everybody understands and that's everybody comfortable with, most people at least. But I would personally definitely say corporate, because I think it streamlines their structure enough to be able to, some with experience, helps you to adjust to the fast-paced environment. I mean, it did for me. So, so yeah, and I started my life with a UK corporate, so I can't even kind of. So I think it does. It does. Yeah, it definitely. I would say corporate.
Shisha, what would you suggest?
So, while of course I'm with Atreyi on that, agree with every point that she mentioned about starting your career with a focus in mind, and going under the skin of the brand, streamlining things, following a certain path, etc. And if you have sort of hit the nail with what kind of industry you want to be with, I think you are there. But to answer your question, I would say an agency, and I'll tell you why. So let's say, and I have had friends who are corporate communications professionals, and since I have come from an agency, they often ask me, so we have asked them for a piece of content. Let's say can be a press release, for example. Why is it taking so much time? Or maybe I've asked them to change one line. Why do they take so much time? Or if I ask them for a meeting, they take like the longest time ever to return with one to revert with one day, one sort of slot. Then I tell them the story कि ऐसा होता है. So let's say, and oh my god, I don't know if I should be saying this, but let's say if you have to fix a meeting, so it has a certain hierarchy that you need to follow. You need to check with your teammates, you need to check the availability of so many people. So it's never really easy to return, or let's say to revert to your client at the nick of a moment with something so concrete. There is so much more going on in the background that a corporate professional who has never worked in an agency will ever know. So yes, there is something. So my point being, if you've worked in an agency, right, so you know exactly how things work, right? Maybe be a briefing book, or maybe speaking to the media. At times you don't even speak to the media, and then you tell your client, yeah, I have spoken, and all of that. There's just so much, right? So you
Too
understand
many
ki
secrets
what
are coming up today, Shirsha. All the PR professionals are red in their face.
I'm being candid. So everybody, I think, has been there, done that. And yeah, so as long as our targets are achieved, I think it's all fair. But yeah, so my point is, when you are in an agency, you know exactly how things work. So when you are in a corporate, you know how better to understand them, or maybe assign tasks, or proceed in a particular manner. So I think that's my justification. But again, it's up to each their own. So
To each their own. Do you think that whether it's agency or corporate today, agility is a very, very strong skill set, because we've seen so much rapid change, as you both mentioned, in the past 2 years. And I think you both raised such important points that traditional media is decreasing, and after that was such a relevant point that writing skills are now coming back, maybe because earlier it was just picking up the phone and speaking to a journalist, but today it's so much more than that. So do you think that both corporates and agencies should invest in giving multidimensional approach exposure to their freshers, because you never know how evolution will happen? Any of you would like to take that?
So yeah, so Sonali, I feel it's important, because I think we are today, as much as I keep talking about, how the switch happened and how I had the luxury of not having the attention span, I would say, like, having extra of it rather. As much as I say it, the times have changed. And today, the requirement, whether you are, irrespective of which industry you are in, irrespective of what position you are in, and irrespective of which side of the fence you are in, it is very, very important. Right? So, as I was saying, like, from an agency, the good part is that you actually know how to juggle too many things at the same point of time, because you don't have a choice. I think corporates are also moving there somewhere, because while you're not juggling multiple clients at a given point of time, you are also juggling different departments at a given point of time. So each side has its pros, each side has its cons. uh, but the common factor remains that we're in a very, very fast paced environment, and if you did it first, you did it, else it doesn't matter. So I think having more of training, and having areas where you have that kind of approach given to the newbies or even new joinees, irrespective of what experience they come with, I think it's very, very important to build in that agility, because nobody's born with it, right? You learn it with experience, you develop it with experience. And I think that approach should be there, irrespective of where anybody is. So yeah,
Thank you for that
unfortunately, you don't
answer.
get so much of luxury of doing it, but I think yes, I would definitely say that I wish we had that.
I'm coming to you, Shirsha, with another question, and I want to know, like, when you're making a switch, and this is a very tactical question, would you want to make that switch in an industry that is familiar? So, for instance, if you have built your career in, say, tech PR, just giving an example, would it then make more sense to apply for a corporate communication job in a tech company as opposed to, say, an alcobev company? Do you feel that these are conscious choices? If you want to map out your career as a young PR professional, and you aspire to, we all aspire that, okay, I want to work for this company, or I want to work for that company. Do you think that, especially when you're making that switch from, say, agency to corporate, do you think it's very important to work in that particular sector before you join a corporate in that sector?
Sonali, first things first, of course, it gives you an advantage, an edge, certainly, right? So, if you are, let's say, from a tech background and you apply to a tech company, of course, you get a huge advantage, right? Because you work there, you know the media, you know what kind of content goes in there, you have the right skills, probably. Of course, the skills can be honed. It's not really like somebody from fashion and beauty background can't apply to one if the person has the right skills. Of course, I don't see a reason why not, right? Having said that, what I did was it was a major shift from a consumer and corporate side to the financial services sector. Very new for me. It was something I had never, done in my life. But having said that, I knew my game, right? So I knew that it would not be a challenge at all. Of course, I was a little skeptical, but I did read up about the industry. I made a conscious choice of knowing that right now, when we are in the middle of a pandemic and financial services sector was so essential, and people, I think media started writing extensively about financial planning and how it was, I think, the most needed, it was need of the hour, right? So I think that was something which attracted me to make this shift in the present company that I'm in. But having said that, it is of course very important for one to do a thorough research. Like, don't just enter a company because you want to enter the corporate side, right? Know the game, know what goes into the business, the people, I think, how the company is doing, and how the business is, the growth projection that the company is poised to have. So I think that understanding is something which is very required right now, which is required right now.
Makes sense, and thank you for that, Shirsha. I want to ask both of you, and Atreyi, I'll go first with you. One top skill when shifting from corporate communication to agency and vice versa, and you've done both, so maybe you can answer that both ways, Atreyi.
Um, I think you should introspect before doing any switch anywhere, and know where you what you can do. Uh, in terms of, see, for me, for instance, right, I knew I was a people's person when I started my career. With over years of experience, I knew that I would possibly, my forte is client relations. Okay. uh, Content is something that I started enjoying eventually. uh, but uh, but the essential reason why I switched in, I mean, I was from a different background before I went into an agency. I had no idea about, yes, I knew about media, but I actually was from a completely different background. I was into an export and manufacturing unit, which was into copper conductors. Who would ever think somebody for like hardcore corporate would actually go into an agency? But I knew that I am good with building relationships, right? So I knew I would enjoy that challenge. And I think it's very important, as Shisha also said, and I would second that, that to do that research. Don't make the change because you want to make the change. Know what you're getting into, because I would have a certain skill uh, which is an X factor, right? Shisha would have something different, you would have something different. And when you work in a team, wherever you would go, it is very important to be able to know what your X factor is, because again, wherever you go, teamwork becomes a second nature for you. If you can't work in that team together and you don't know how to hone in on your particular X factor, which would add value to it, then the entire project's gonna fall, because it's just one thing. So I think introspection is possibly the biggest skill. But I think teamwork comes in a very, very close second, irrespective of where you are.
That's true, absolutely. What about you, Shirsha? What do you suggest?
So I think one skill that is, I think, the most important one right now is people management skill, right? As exactly what Atreyi mentioned. So be it if it's an agency, you are working with your team members, and of course it's on an average it's a 3 to 4 member team. There are again your branch members, etc. Like a lot of media like journalists you are working with. When you are in a corporate, you work with multiple agencies, you work with your finance teams, as much as you sit with them for hours to get probably an invoice cleared, just for an instance, right? So I think if you are a people's person, if you really know how to crack the game, I think that's about it. So you may not be really good with for instance content, right? But then you can discuss with the right person, know who to approach, when, what kind of questions to ask, how to sort of break the ice, and then source that particular matter from the person. So I think people skills is something which is like very very important right now.
Yes, absolutely. Especially in an era when we are all, making remote,
Of
working on
course.
a lot of remote and multi-city teams. I want to ask you both, beyond, irrespective whether you're an agency or corporate, what do you suggest? I mean, beyond people skills, that's of course more something that you are also internally, your personality and how you work with other people. But in terms of, apart from say content, which we all know, or people skills or teamwork, what are the most important skills that you need today to survive in either agency or corporate? Like the top three skills, if you both can name, beyond the ones you've already mentioned.
So I was actually going to add on
Content.
to it, Shisha, if I may.
Yes, please.
So I think I was actually Sonali. I was going to add on to what Shisha said, right? And I think you're right. People skills, it's pretty innate in us. That's why we are doing what we are doing, right? For over the years, if we were not people's person, we would not. We would be in the wrong career choice whatsoever. I think one of the things I think is very important is essentially, time management. Because irrespective of where you are, as a communication professional, you have to know what to prioritize. I think it comes in a little more handy when it comes to an agency because you're literally running against time. With corporate, you do have somewhere in the luxury of it, but you know I think even as a corporate, because you're managing so many departmental opinions to put together that one project, I think you should know what to prioritize, right? Whether it's sales comes first or operation comes first, or whatever, anything else. That's one thing I would say. The second thing I think is going to be empathy. I think in a corporate, you are at a juncture already, because there's a certain code of conduct which is laid down by your previous people, right? In an agency, because of the dynamics of how you work, you keep building on the code as you grow as an agency. Uh, because you are working with in a corporate again, and I'm going to draw references like that you're working in a corporate, you're working with a 60-year-old and as well as a 25-year-old possibly. Again, you have to have that empathy to kind of work with what's happening where, sort of a thing. You need to be able to put in yourself either in a client's shoes or a team member's shoes, because at the end of the day, you're working with a team and individual, irrespective if that individual is a client or a team member, and as literally an extension of them in most ways. So these are definitely two things I would say. And the third, I think, reading habits. uh, it's not something, it's more of a habit, not technically a skill. But I think the inquisitiveness to what is, so maybe inquisitiveness is a skill that you need to develop. But the more you read, the more you are aware of what's happening on either side. Sometimes I come across an article in LinkedIn and I'm like, oh, it's written by somebody who's from a complete corporate background. But it's so interesting that you realize that, oh, I could utilize this when handling with this client. uh, and at the same time, sometimes you come across uh, a communicator who's talking about how to communicate possibly in Thailand. It's a very different ball game altogether because the audience is very different. But you learn again how to kind of put that into a very corporate structure as well, uh, because there's maybe just one anecdote here or there. So yeah, I think that's that time management, empathy, and I would say inquisitiveness. But yeah, reading comes in all of them. Yeah, yeah. I'm sounding like a teacher right now, but yeah, whatever.
Nice. What about you, Shirsha?
So, fourth point after the 3 points of Atreyi, uh, learn different formats of storytelling. So right now we are at a time, I think only a pitch note or a press note, press release will not work. Right? Of course, it's the basic, it's hygiene, but learn photography skills, learn how to take a video, learn editing, learn edit voice modulation, or maybe editing the voice note of somebody. So at a time right now, I think all of us, and I speak for I think the most of us who are in the profession right now, we are doing so much more than just facilitating the conversations of our spokespeople to the media. We are going out there collecting collaterals, clicking a picture which goes into the media channels along with an interview, or when there's, let's say, a press event and you don't see a photographer there and you need to click a picture right away to send to the buyers, right? You click and you send. You can't have a blurred picture or a distorted one. So I think these are very basic skills which nobody really paid attention to, but I think right now we are working cross functionally and we really need to up these basic skills of ours. Everybody has a smartphone, let's just utilize it.
Shirsha, I think my one of my co-content curators, Tarunjeet, is going to love you for that because she's very strong on the same thing. We have actually very little time left, so I'm going to just shift this to a more rapid fire round for you both.
Do we get to
Which
get a hamper
no,
like a
but you
coffee
get
with Karan?
you can have coffee with Tarun if you're in Bangalore. Okay, so I'm going to quickly come to that. Atreyi, I'll begin with you. One person, company that inspired you to switch. You're muted, Atreyi.
Sorry, I didn't realize it. I was saying that that actually gave me extra time to think it through. But nevertheless, without sounding too cheesy about it, on screen, it was actually Sonali. So yeah, I mean, I met her and she saw that I was getting interested in a lot of digital aspects of it, and she actually said that give it a shot, you might just be good at it. I turned out to be pretty decent at it. So yeah, yeah, you. Thank you. Sonali, now you're muted.
Yeah, sorry, that really, bobs back to me. uh,
You
but
wanted to wrap it. Did I win the hamper or there was no hamper?
अभी शीशा का आंसर बाकी है.
अभी बाकी है.
शीशा, what about you?
No, I'll have to give it to the amazing clients that I've had, and I'm lucky. I'm really blessed to have such clients in my life, right? Again, working in an agency, I have seen my fellow colleagues dealing with the tantrums of their clients, and I speak of no agency in particular, but all across wherever I worked. So I think managing them becomes more important than managing the work, which may not be that overwhelming, right? So, having said that, I have had the chance and opportunity to work with such amazing humans, and especially I'll have to give it to them, the brand managers from Tata Consumer Products. Oh my God! Be it empathy, be it understanding, be it knowledge of the industry they are in, be it working with the agency like it's one family. Oh my God! So I think I was sure, I was clear in my head that yes, if ever I have to move to the corporate side, this is how I'd like to be. So I think that was something which sort of encouraged me to make the move and try to be, kind of, even if I could be half of what they are, I'll be very, lucky.
Okay, very quickly because we are ultimately an upskilling panel. Are we beginning with you? Can you just share the few things that people need to, two things maybe, where if they are envisioning a switch from corporate to agency, they need to be mindful of?
So Sonali, I would say this. I realize that I'm going to keep it short. I think it's a great experience. I have been both sides of it, of the fences, I say, and I think either ways, I have enjoyed every aspect of it so much. Uh, the two types of it, right? Whether it's agency or corporate, they're very different from each other, and you need to find the right fit. It completely depends on the person. So as I said, that I think one thing everybody should be mindful about is, what is it that you're looking for? Where do you see yourself, let's say 2 years from now? I'm not even talking 5, right? I'm saying, where do you think you can really grow? So be mindful of what you really want, because otherwise, if you don't enjoy it, you're never going to excel in it, right? And uh, eventually that's what matters, right? You should really love every day. I mean, you should not be like, oh my god, work again. You should be like, oh my god, yes, today I've got this to do. So but the moment you realize that, so that's that the first thing I think everybody should be mindful about. Because the right fit, as I said, completely depends on the person. um, the second thing I would say, and in my experience, I think there are, skill sets, and there are traits, both in combination, that talks about, you know, uh, how much you excel. Um, we I mean, sometimes you get a lot more freedom to do things. Sometimes you won't get a freedom to do things. And I think there are a lot of online modules, that are available today. Even if they're not certificate courses, keep doing that. Keep skill development, is very very important. We are in the field of communication. We are in the industry of communication, and communication, uh, per se, is something that is needed, required, and a complete must, irrespective of who you're dealing with, right? Verbal, written, body language,
Thanks,
everything.
sorry, I'm gonna have to cut you
No,
because we
that's
have.
okay. So I think that's what I would say.
Nisha, what about you? Sorry, I'm having to keep an eye on the time also, so we'll have to keep it really short. We have like 1 or 2 questions left, and I have to complete that in the time I have.
So the question is one skill, or let's say, sorry, can you repeat the question?
Two skills that two things to be mindful of, basically. When you're shifting.
So yes, I think I'm of course aligned with what Atreyi said. Be mindful and know what you're getting into. Do your due research, right? Know about the sector before entering it.
Fair enough. Two skills or resources that you would suggest people to they need to for skilling up for a switch. Atri, we'll begin with you. Short, concise.
Yeah, no, I didn't get it. You mean two resources
Two
in this?
skills or resources that you suggest or can suggest to people for skilling up for a switch.
Okay, so I think, one, as I said, online module. So there are a couple of things. I mean, I do it myself. There's something called Future Learn, right? I think that's a very, very good thing. I mean, you can, of course, go to a lot of Coursera's and Upgrades, but Future Learn gives out a lot of reading material and everything that's interesting. That's one thing I would do. The second I would do is, pick up anything that you get your hands on, and keep reading on it, because the more you read, the better you get at it. So I think anything, yeah.
Thank you. What about you, Shirsha?
So I'll say learn Google Analytics, learn the game of data and numbers. So I think right now it's all about the number heavy your pitch is. I think the more attention eyeballs it'll grab.
Thank you. That's a really, really relevant one. Any one phrase of advice to people aspiring to change careers, switching? Adre, one phrase.
Enjoy it. It's going to be a learning curve. There are going to be hurdles, but enjoy it.
Shirsha.
If you want to explore it, go ahead, but just know what you're getting into. Like, don't cut a sorry figure. But of course, it's a fun game.
Absolutely. And this panel has also been absolute fun. I would request you, we have a lot of visitors who come in across the weekend to see the panel, and there may be more questions that they will address us on our Facebook page. So I would request both of you to take some time off. So, dear audience, if you're watching this, you can address questions to both panelists or to one of them, and do tag them, and I'm sure they'll be very happy to respond to any queries that you have. Again, a very big shout out to Tarunjeet and Pooja. And Tarun, thank you for the time, skill, timely reminders on the time moving. We didn't get to know how time passed so fast. And ladies, Atreyi and Shirsha, you both have been wonderful today. Thank you so much for everything and having such a wonderful panel. You both were so refreshing and candid in your approach. I'm sure people will benefit a lot from hearing
Thanks a
you.
lot. This has been fun.
Pleasure.
Glad
Thank
we
you.
Thank
could
you.
have.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So,
Thank you.